Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed your coffee break. My name's Lamre Akinola. I'm the editor of African Business, and I'm going to be moderating this next session, our fourth keynote of the day, which will be from Dr. Oba Otudeko, who is the chairman of Honeywell Group in Nigeria. The Honeywell Group is a conglomerate that is invested in everything from food and agro-allied industries to real estate, infrastructure, energy, finance, telecoms, and security. He's also the chairman of First Bank of Nigeria Holding, chairman of Fan Milk of Nigeria PLC, and Airtel Nigeria. He also served as the 16th president and chairman of the Council of the Nigerian Stock Exchange between 2006 and 2009. Now, I could go on. There are many more affiliations and many more accomplishments, but you get the idea. He's a heavyweight. The format of the session will be that the chairman will make a presentation of about 15 minutes, giving his perspective on Made in Africa and what Made in Africa means. And then, time permitting, we'll have a bit of a chat up here, maybe picking up on some of the themes that the chairman identifies in his presentation. And if we're really lucky, and if we're really disciplined on time, we might even be able to take a question or two. But anyway, without further ado, I would like to invite the chairman to please take the stage for his presentation. Thank you.
Is it good evening? Good evening, colleagues and friends. Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. I feel so very much like one of you once again. I wish that I can roll it back so that I can be just as young as you. But not to worry, I share from your vivacity. My subject is Made in Africa. It's very interesting to discuss a subject like this. Indeed, I have to look at where I'm coming from to be in a position to be here. I started banking career 57 years ago. But I was born by entrepreneurs. My mother did business throughout West Africa. My late mother still has some shops in Mokola Market in Ghana, in another market in Zaria, and one in Sokoto, all in Nigeria, and also in Abidjan. I have been fortunate to take from the genes of my parents, and I'd like to believe that it's the genes and the education that must be working in me, because I did some pioneering stuff in Nigeria. As an entrepreneur, we imported pig milk, from which we became also part of the owners of the founding of pig milk. I'm sure those of you who are Nigerians and possibly West Africans will know what pig milk is all about. Engendura baking yeast, Femipan yeast, stockfish, etc., etc. And from this, I became a manufacturer of some of this, and also went to some plastic business. The vision of being an entrepreneur actually was born in me, and I was part of it. Now, I want us to look at where we are today. My next slides will be talking about facts and figures about Africa. Africa is not only about famine, poverty, and malnourishment. Africa we all know, is the second largest continent on the globe with 1.2 million people, and I can assure you that to anybody who is in business, that's a big enough market. 41% of the population are young, many of who are here with us, of which 38% are in the urban community, and I believe about 200 million are living in Nigeria, meaning that 1 out of every 5 Africans is a Nigerian. We had a GDP growth of 3.7% in 2016, and I don't expect that on the average Africa will have more than 4.5% in 2017. But it's not easy to do business in Africa. We are 143 in the average ease of doing business ranking in the world, and yet we continue to be an exporter of commodities. Africa I want to say that Africa is not, the productivity of Africa is low. As I said, Africa's contribution to global trade is almost insignificant, but there's a lot of opportunity, massive opportunity for us for improvements in our productivity in Africa, especially through increased trade amongst African countries. This is one particular fact that I want to bring out today. I have had experiences of traveling in Africa. As a banker, we used to have something called West African Bankers Association, and it took us sometimes 18 hours to go from Lagos to Senegal. Some of the times, the difficulties of communication, when in those days before the GSM, we used to first of all go to what was called Nitel at that time. We'll book and then make a call to London in order to be able to speak, to someone in the Gambia. To speak to someone in Abidjan, we had to make a call at that time to Paris. But these are just indications of the opportunities that we have. The situation today has improved thanks to the privileges that some of us had to participate in the GSM activities. I happen to have been fortunate to be the chairman of one of the GSM companies in Nigeria, and also I won the second GSM license on behalf of MTN in Nigeria. To understand Made in Africa agenda, it is important that we also look at factors that are very, very key. Contribution to manufacturing in the continent is very, very insignificant. We need to work on Made in Africa by ensuring that we develop our manufacturing, we develop increase in productivity, in order that we can cascade downstream for inclusive value creation, ensuring that it's not just that our people will farm cocoa or coffee and will not add any value before exporting. So what we want to discuss today is to put emphasis on the increase of contribution to manufacturing so that the GDP of African economy can be improved upon. Slides 7 and 8. It is sad that African economies were set up to be exporters by the colonial masters. The outlook at that time did not encourage productivity or manufacturing. We need today to do more than farming and mining, to encourage productivity orientation by working with our governments to promote policies and economic structures, as well as infrastructure that encourage production, because clearly for Africa to serve the needs of modern-day Africans, you, particularly who have moved out of Africa to have discovered a lifestyle that is totally different, we need to change the business model of Africa. Africa must create reforms in governance, reforms in the composition, as well as the approach to business, in order that we will be able to serve the population of today, which is you, ladies and gentlemen. Even in spite of this, we are confronted by the sad rise of anti-globalization and protectionism, populism, and policies that are becoming increasingly more and more protectionist, which may stand in the way of the flow of resources that are needed, are required to develop manufacturing on the scale that we need to be able to answer to the needs and focus on the development of the Africa that we need today, to break the gridlock occasioned by the clash of these policies, forced globalization, and now the rise possibly of Marine Le Pen, the Trumps of this world, and I think the vote for Brexit, depending on which angle you are looking at it. These are tendencies that may not necessarily be very positive to the needs of Africa today. Because one thing which I like to make very clear to us is that my experience is that isolationism cannot provide the development that Africa requires. Africa requires more, not only the entrepreneurship of businessmen like ourselves, but we need the cooperation also of the suppliers of capital, technology, and various types of partnerships for us to provide and fill those necessary gaps that exist in order that we, as Africans and those who live in Africa, will be able to secure and live the lifestyle that they deserve. Of course, from all that we have said to ourselves, there is a huge potential for business in Africa. I want us to remove ourselves from the stereotypes, ladies and gentlemen, of Africa, the suppliers of raw material. In-depth studies have revealed that as a continent, we are very, very rich in mineral and human resources. And I will always appreciate the vast potential that the African market presents to all of us. No group of businesses will ignore a market of 1.2 billion people. But I need to raise the issue that Africa, yet is one continent, is a diverse and stratified market with varying tastes. In West Africa, our style of eating is different from the food that our friends in Eastern Africa eat, as well as the food that is eaten in the Southern Africa. This orientation and cultural diversity present also a challenge and a shape to the kind of market that we must work towards. As we have seen, our continent is a vast market that is calling for entrepreneurs. And moving beyond what Adebola said, I am not saying you should all move to Africa. When you want to move to Africa, your movement to Africa must be informed, structured in a manner that takes the best of the first world to combine with the realities and the potentials of our people in order that we can make life much better for our people to live in. As I have said earlier on, our country is not a single territory, neither is it a single market, but it provides for us opportunities. Opportunities that breaks the various barriers that divide us as a people, that create infrastructural access, opportunity that gives us opportunity to countries like Nigeria to provide one market that you can access without having to go through boundaries, without having to go through laws that are different. The interesting diversity of the continent, which implies that Africa is a conglomeration of various markets with diverse needs, speaks to serious investors to aim for specific region-specific strategies in order that the investor, as he's working, realizes that he's serving the uniqueness of respective markets and optimally derive the growth, which is the aspiration as well as the hope of investors. Localization as a veritable market for entry strategy is important, but you need local managers. You need people like you, highly talented managers who have understood the theory and the depth of how businesses need to be organized, the talent and deep knowledge combined with the local environment in order that you can produce goods that fit the taste of the target market. For example, one of our companies, the Honeywell flour mills, we have recently just acquired a 64-hectare land in which we are building some facilities that will produce essentially using more of local grains in order that we can sell ball foods. Nigerians and West Africans will know what are called ball foods. They bring a massive potential of business so that the ball food for the Nigerians who are smiling would provide for us massive opportunities for us to reduce the requirement of our company for foreign exchange, which is a major challenge as it is. Guinness have done the same thing by creating a brand called Origin in Nigeria. The brand Origin uses a blend of local herbs and seeds in order to reduce the need for importation of inputs from abroad and therefore reducing the pressure on foreign exchange. In order for us to achieve the success that we need, because let it be clear, business is about growth, profit, and development. Business is not charity. Therefore, the standard has to be global, the input has to be efficient, and the practices must be best practices. We have discovered that for us to achieve maximum productivity and growth that we aim for, we must work on collaborations and partnerships, as well as develop genuine capacity through African businesses working with owners of technology, designing special machineries. For instance, Honeywell flour mills, we went into certain discussions with Buller, who are the manufacturers of our machines from Switzerland, and through our collaboration, local experience, and their machine technology, we've been able to develop certain types of food, apart from boiled foods, that would also be exporting to Europe. That is what partnership in technology can lead to, and also to the credibility as well as the growth we are looking for. We also have experience of our partnership that we have developed in the running of our hotel. Some of you have lived in the Radisson Hotel in Lagos. We supply the facilities. We are owners of the properties, but the management is provided by Residor, and with the combination of world-class partnership and capacities with our local facilities, those of you who have stayed at our hotel will know that we managed to present something that competes with the best world. The same thing on intra-African trade. I think MTN is a very good example of inter-African trade. A license from Nigeria, technology from South Africa, and here we are today. I think we have one of the world beaters in business. And Nigerian banks have also done something which I think is also commendable, because a few Nigerian banks are out there developing intra-African trade by ensuring that they bring and transfer their technology to neighbors in various other countries. In doing this, I am sure the question will be raised as to how successful can we be? Our success can be really great as investors if we understand the direction in which the national government in our respective polities is going. I want to say from experience and recommend that we should not antagonize government. Do not antagonize your government, rather seek to work with government. Working with government meaning that you form pressure groups, trade associations, manufacturers association in the case of Nigeria, chambers of commerce by which you'll be able to make presentation to government, and working together with government in order that the respective environment can be there. I've always said it to those who care to listen: work with government, do not swim against the tide, do reasonable public-private partnerships, and you are likely to have very, very rewarding results from your investment. I want to believe that the continent of Africa has such large potential that has been untapped, and therefore a case is made for increase intra-African trade as a viable strategy for promoting productivity and growth of African businesses. In practice, ordinarily moving between Nigeria and Togo, you pass through two very, very tedious borders. That cannot be good for inter-African business. I believe that working through the organized private sector need to engage government more and more. As a matter of fact, using the respective regional groupings, ECOWAS, SADC, and the likes, there is no need for the barriers that are created amongst African countries. And I believe that the African Union will do something to create and break these barriers in order that intra-African trade will increase the velocity as well as the size of the business that will be done between African countries for the future that we are looking for. I want to encourage us that indigenous African businesses should entrench risk management capability within their businesses. Modern day businesses need proactive planning. Proactive planning, therefore, means looking ahead to see the various risks and challenges that will need to be overcome in order that businesses, can be fully compliant, appropriate due diligence can be applied to identify barriers, and good and sound organizational structure and strategies can be put in place that will lead to us having first-class returns on our investments. I want to say that integrity is key. In all the experiences that I've had, I've always found, just like even when we were young, that the straight route is always the shortest. Therefore, any temptation by anyone to ask you to take the shortcut, in the end, will lead to nowhere. At the end of the day, you can still be successful by doing the right thing. I want to remind you once again, the shortcut ends up usually being the longest route. The question will be asked, why is it that entrepreneurs in Africa end up being proprietors of conglomerates, having their hands in so many pies? The answer is actually in what I consider survival. Ireland has told you earlier on how difficult it is, and I want to confirm to you that cost of energy is the highest cost of doing business in most businesses in Africa. The process, because you have to create more or less a self-contained hegemony for yourself, supply your energy, supply your water, supply your roads, and all the infrastructure that are taken for granted in the first world, you end up practicing all this, as a result of which your respective small practices of a small power station here, of a small water works here, of a small sewage plant here, turns you into specialists in those respective occupation, as a result of which you become suppliers, as it were, to yourself and therefore to communities around you, which is the reason why I like to say that it is the gaps that exist in Africa that turned many African businesses to a master of all, as it were. Jack of all trade, I say master of all. As I said earlier on, ladies and gentlemen, there is need for indigenous African businesses to adopt global best practices. History has shown that global best practices are an integral part to consistent growth, to longevity, to sustainability of businesses, because without institutions and best practices, I can tell you from experience that there will be no sustainability. If we want our businesses to outpace us, to outlive us, we must encourage ourselves to inculcate best practices in the businesses that we run. Development at the end of the day, at whatever level, either political, national, or business level, is people-driven. And it's not just about people. It must be talents and extraordinarily talented individuals, competent individuals, because as I have noticed, and I want to say it, there is nothing called African standard. You are either applying global standard or you are not in business. That is the reality. It's got to be global standard. I see my friend laughing. I am sure it is global standard that made it possible for you to do your mobile money successfully. We, therefore, after a lot of experiences, decided, and I saw some of our employees here, we created something called Honeywell Excellence Program, where we go to universities. We've been doing this for the past about 18 years, where we go to universities and recruit the best and train them through management courses in a period of between 18 months and 24 months. One of our excellent employees is in the MBA class here now, Akitoye Ubui. He must be somewhere in the hall. And I saw another one who came to say hello to me, only pointing to me that there are 3 others out there, meaning that we have about 5 people. We have an alumni network whereby people who have worked with us, who we have trained, even if they leave, they look out for the interest of the Honeywell group, and some of them have returned, and I like to believe that that's another way of not only developing best talents, but also solving the manpower gap in the country. I want to seize the opportunity to say to you that skills and vocational capacity is very much lacking in Africa. From the experience that I have, somehow we have found out, and we are trying to engage government to change the curriculum of our institutions, higher institutions, because most of the curricula have emphasized more the arts than the various artisanal, vocational, education, and engineering that are more relevant to the type of development we are looking for as a people. You need the right talent to grow your businesses, and there is no way you can grow without the best talent. You can't negotiate this away. Africa is one story I have been involved in for the past 56 years of work. Your entry strategy is quite important. Think deep. Own your vision. Base it on time-tested values. Ensure that you choose the best to work with you. Your carefully crafted strategy is very, very important. And as I said, sustainability depends only on best practices and only on institutions and not on individuals. Believe in yourself. It's not an easy run, I can assure you. It is tough. You've got to be determined. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to be resilient and very, very tough on your execution strategy. Performance management is key because it's only then that the workers can be reminded that someone is continuously watching and ensure that you are strict and you stick to the rules. Ensure that critical milestones are measured and also debated with your managers. Your goals must be kept constantly in view because your destination is success. You cannot do anything if you are not successful. As a matter of fact, when you see people smile at you, it's because you are successful. Success has many, many brothers, but failure has no family. The African story is a very challenging story. I will not deceive you, but it's been a very rewarding one. It's still an unexplored story. It is potentially rewarding and exciting. If I had to undertake the journey again, I think, and I want to say, I will do it again. Because the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. You are the laborers we are looking for. I invite you to come on and join in the journey with me. Thank you very much.
How much time do we have left? 1 minute. Okay. The quickest Q&A in all of history. Unfortunately, I said at the outset, if we're lucky, we'll get to ask some questions. It turns out luck was not on our side in that respect. But I think you'll agree with me that it was a very insightful, enjoyable presentation. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences, your thoughts, and more importantly, I think it was great to see you illustrate some of the steps that are being taken by Honeywell to address the issue of Made in Africa, because it's easy to talk, it's much harder to walk. Now, I'm not going to get to ask this question, but I really, really wanted to pick up on the point of don't antagonize government. And go with the flow, because the question is, well, what if that flow leads to ruin? Do you still go with the flow? And I feel like I want to give the chairman at least an opportunity to address this issue. What happens when you can't avoid antagonizing government? What do you do when government antagonizes you?
You see, you can look at it from the perspective of my friend here. If you are in a pressure group, political pressure group, you can decide to antagonize the government. But if you have an investment of the size that some of us have against the reality of the powers of government in developing countries, I'm sorry to be that honest about it, they have the powers of almost life and death. When I say don't antagonize government, I mean engage government in a friendly manner. That's what I mean. I don't say you don't give opinions to government. I also spoke about creating pressure groups. We have, for example, I was one of the founders and currently the life patron of Nigerian South Africa Chamber of Commerce. That gives me access, or gave me a lot of access, both to the President of Nigeria and the President of South Africa, because we had to hold what was called the binational conference. In that binational conference, issues concerning business are raised. Apart from that, we have Manufacturers Association, Chambers of Commerce, various pressure groups. You don't want to be seen in a developing country antagonizing government, and I encourage you not to antagonize government.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. Unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions. Oh, one more. Okay, look at that. It is our lucky day. Okay, who has a good question? There's one question. And if you lie to me,
No,
I will antagonize you.
Okay?
Okay, the lady's put her hand up and she looks very confident.
Thank you very much. My question relates to the issue of gender in Africa. Gender. So gender is obviously, as we know, one of the SDGs that we're working towards. And my question relates to what your thoughts are, Mr. Chairman, around what we can do as African businesses to put gender equality and gender inclusiveness as part of the Made in Africa story. Thank you.
Yeah, I know better than to antagonize around that question. Okay, can we squeeze one more in, or?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, just this one? Okay, so just this one question on gender, Chairman. What can we do to move things forward?
Well, I want to congratulate the ladies in this hall because your time has come. This is my observation. I had been in various boardrooms in my life, and I'm still on one or two. We look out for ladies, for the women folk generally, to get them on board. I think the challenge is more with the ladies to ensure that they are available, they are trained, they are qualitative. There is a clear agenda of welcome and desire to put ladies more and more on very, very important pedestals in business. And the future is here for you, here. In fact, the future is yesterday, as Adebola will put it. Thank you.